Welcome to this edition of the Million Dollar Mastermind podcast. This is where we pick the brains of high achievers from all walks of life and get their hard-earned, real-world insights on winning. I'm your host, Larry Weidel. We all go through times where it's survival mode. You know, it's just, you're just overloaded, overcommitted, lost some people, some things happen, global scale or, national scale or just company or family, whatever. You don't have enough money, you don't have enough time, enough people, and you're just running. Yep. But you can't run like that all the time. And you get the idea of being you want to have some cushion and some float in your schedule to refresh and replenish so you can stay. You got to make the thing fun for yourself. And the hard thing, I've heard this all along, that the hardest thing for high achievers is to keep themselves excited about what they've got to do, to stay on top and to keep improving,
Sure.
Because it's not enough just to do it. And like Bjorn Borg, he was like at 29 or something, gave up tennis because he just didn't want to practice that much anymore. Now, if someone could have come in there and some kind of maybe, mental coach, some kind of thing like that, and found a way to put some fun and some game type thing into his practicing, but he had worked his way up to the point where it was all he could think of it is like 6 hours a day of drudgery.
Yeah.
And no, then he's out. You're pretty much beat when you get to the point where you look at it like that. But that's how an idea, ideas control everything. Because your one idea from all of a sudden looking at it totally different. And that's why it's important to have positive type people in your life, that.
Yeah, 100%. And I also think on that line, it's interesting because with the tennis example, I know Richard Branson would always say that, when it no longer becomes fun, get out. And sometimes that does lead you towards perhaps something else that brings joy. When you're doing something that you like and you enjoy, you don't have to muster up motivation. And I think that the motivation just is there. You're just creating on it all the time.
Right.
And if it becomes a drudgery a little bit, it also may be an omen sometimes. Sometimes that's an omen to like something else might be pulling you. And I for me, luckily, I don't need to motivate myself per se. Here, I'm already motivated, right? Yeah. But I do think there's times where maybe it's time for people to pivot and time to look at like, well, what is pulling you?
Well, I think that's the thing. If you look at it, Robert, it's the same thing as running a company. You're always changing and adapting. And as you grow, you got to look at I'm like a company. And so I've got to constantly be pivoting. Like you don't have to keep doing the same thing. When things get to be a drag for you, that's usually the time that you need to turn over all of it or some of that to somebody else. Yeah. Because when it's a drag for you and you're the one with the experience, the insight, the potential, the skills, when you're inspired, you're going to think of all kinds of things that you can't think if you're always in there washing and folding the towels.
That's right.
And so maybe that's a sign that you're bored. I would not argue with the magnificent Richard Branson, but the thing is, sometimes we say these things, or if you were around him, you'd get the whole picture to it, rather than the snippet. But the thing is, if you're burnt out of something, offload. Take the time, do for yourself, like you and I are talking about listening to customers. What are they really saying? Well, what are you really saying to yourself? It's like, no, I like this. I love this. I'm good at it. I always have. Right? Yeah. I'm not all of a sudden, I don't like business. It's like, but I don't like that. And so that's where you go in and you say, I ain't doing that anymore. You know why I'm not doing it? Because it poisons my mind. I've done it long enough. It's got to be done. It's important. Yeah. We got to have a powerful person to do it for us. And I can't do it anymore.
100%. And it could just be you want to check some things before you bail. It could be somebody who's around you that's kind of toxic, or it could be It could be that you need to shed roles, right? You got to shed roles. You got to write things up and get them off your plate and put somebody there. Or it could be that you took a series of losses or failures back to back to back, and you feel a little tired, and you got to rehab yourself a little bit.
Cumulative, Yeah. And we all go through this, and we got to refresh and everything. But the deal is, you can change directions, but I always find that if you offload certain things, you create the opportunity to accelerate in other areas. That's the way to look at it. It's like, I would say your subconscious is telling you you've got greater fish to fry out there that's burbling beneath the surface, that they want to come out now.
Yeah.
But these other things are just interfering. You're going crazy like that. It's like, time, find somebody else to do, get it done, redesign your, bring in a consultant if you've got to.
It's in my, I showed it to somebody else the other day. In fact, it is in my book, What Works. And I talk about shedding roles. And because we had a call with somebody who had a call with a prospect, and he'd been doing his company for years. And but I noticed with that company was like, it's really time to shed roles. It was with a smaller, different company with our sister company. And you got to be able to write up the roles that you're wearing and get them off your plate and put people on that role, train them up and get them going. And it's always your job to shed roles and build the team, That's key. And otherwise it's going to become not fun.
Yeah. And that's a lot of times when you're used, the president, founder, or whatever, you're used to doing it all yourself. But at some point you got to grow up and say, if I don't change, I'm going to continue to be doing this the rest of my life. And the problem, the wise way to look at it, is, of course, it's going to be done perfectly if you do it because you've done it a million times. And of course, they're going to screw it up a little bit for a while. But the deal is, you're picking up another 24 hours in the day. Yep. And if until you bring somebody on board, you're still trying to find out how to do it with your 24 hours. Yep. And once we all reach our maximum efficiencies, we get our time down and our meals down and our workout. Yep. And so, as a salesperson, I'm making all the calls I can make, all the sales I can make. Yeah. Now, what are you going to do? Because if you keep doing that, you're going to grind yourself into powder. So you got to find a way to duplicate yourself, and you create people wonder, how do you create systems? By offloading those jobs, and you offload the system. How do you do it? How can you get somebody else to do it? Start with the simplest steps, and then go from there. But when you go in there, let's just talk about, I just thought that was great time, and great thought and great reason to write a book. Like, what works?
Yeah, I've been doing. I was doing this for a while. I started the company, and I write, as I showed you my Moleskine. I write notes a lot. I write a lot. I love writing. Yeah. And I think a lot. Write notes, my Apple Notes, and often when we would do things, and things worked, and a lot of people don't. They don't write down what worked. Right? They just go on. Right. They had a great week. Yeah. That's it. See you next weekend or next week, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I tend to write down, like, when we're doing well, I would tend to dissect, like, well, what happened? What did we do? Right. And what worked, And to me, that's always been really, really important. It's like, you got to sort of reflect a little bit. People only often reflect when it's negative. They look at things tank, and then they start looking. And they're like, what's going on? What do I need to change? But when it's great and you made a great commission, or your income's great, or things are going well and you're winning, they don't look. They just go into next week. And that would be the time to write down the pattern and build the successful model.
For those of you who are sick and tired of fooling around and are dead serious about wanting to move up fast, I've got something especially for you. I've combined the best insights from over 40 years in business and making $70 million in income, and compressed them into a free webinar. That's right, it's a free resource. If you want to find out exactly what the concepts are that I use in coaching million-dollar earners, register now at WeidelOnWinning.com. You'll discover the 5-part framework used by so many to reach their financial, personal, and professional goals. You can find that link in this episode's show notes. Robert, that is such a powerful point.
Yeah.
And I think most of us overlook that because the president founder of our company would talk about when he started. He said, he had a lot of success, legendary, whatever. But he said, the only thing I remember, I only remember the time people said no, and the disappointments. It just burned my soul, But that's going to be the natural reaction. But if you go out there, but he was also excellent at writing down the positive, do this, do that, the other.
Yeah.
And I think he stopped when he got it up to, we had a manager meeting. He gave us the handouts. It was like, he actually read them and went through them one by one. 176 things. If you do these things, you'll win.
Nice. Yeah.
But it was specific to be, it was just like every kind of situation, he had it down. But the thing is, what he didn't do was like lessons from the people who went bad, And a lot of times they're just going to turn on you, and there's not much you can learn from that. But you can't dwell on things you can't control. But when you go in, like I did that when I started in sales, I had this white notebook, and I would put lessons I learned, what works for me. What I'm saying? Right. I don't really care what works for everybody else in the world. I need to know what works for me. And so that's what it was, my own version of what works.
Yeah, that's right.
And one thing I remember one thing from it is like, you make an appointment, and it was we were in Atlanta at the time. So I make an appointment like on a Monday for a Wednesday night to go see somebody. And of course I show up on Wednesday night, they're not there. After driving through Atlanta traffic and this and the other, is like, okay, Mr. Stupid, confirm your appointment before you leave the office.
Yeah.
Right before you make that 45-minute drive.
Yeah.
Just give them a heads up and say, things are looking great. Got some exciting stuff to show you. Can't wait. I'm getting in the car now,
Yeah.
And see you in 45 minutes. But just because if they're not there, find out. But just a simple thing like that is like where I'm teaching myself.
Yeah.
But little things like that, you can make yourself super efficient,
Yeah.
I talked to, I've had him on the podcast before. His name is Cosmo, but in Palm Beach, he cuts my hair, what's left of it. And he runs this salon. He makes about $1 million a year out of it.
Yeah.
And they don't make that much money in the hair business,
Yeah. Yeah. I found that out recently. I've heard that.
Yeah. It's pretty pathetic. And, but he said, people all the time asking him what his system is, And he and I have a great management course every time I get my haircut, Unfortunately, it's a very short period of time because he doesn't have much to work with. But we always laugh about these things. He said, my system, he says, here's my system. If I walk through that doorway and I happen to bump in my shoulder on the right-hand side, you know what I do? The next time I walk through that door, I move over to the middle a little bit more so I don't bump my shoulder.
Right.
That's my system.
Yeah. Well, of course,
correct. Guys that bump their shoulder every time they walk through the door, and they never make an adjustment.
Yeah.
But that's doing off of what works, And life will teach you. The thing is, life will teach you. Business will teach you if you get off your rear and follow your curiosity.
Yeah.
Your curiosity is telling you where to go.
Yeah.
It's telling where you to go. It's what for whatever reason, there's something in there for you to go next. May not be for the rest of your life, but follow the curiosity. Don't sit around and flip quarters and say, I wish I could do. No, do something about it. Read a book or talk to somebody or somehow move in that direction. But then when you get in there, what you run into that's an obstacle, that tells you what you need next, need to solve. Yeah. And basically, what some people do, they do wrong. They say, oh, that's why I can't do it. I don't have the money, or I don't, this, that, and no. That's telling you what you need next.
Yeah.
The world is full
that's
of
right. That's right. I think the problems, things in life present themselves sometimes as problems or whatever. But if you kind of look at them as omens and you kind of think to some degree, like, okay, like this is actually an opportunity. Like if it's frustrating, it could actually be the opportunity manifesting.
Yeah.
And,
right.
Rather than some nuisance. So you just need to look at it and kind of go, okay, well, what is the opportunity?
Yeah. And the thing, it's kind of encouraging when you realize every obstacle you run into, the people that come behind you are going to run into as well.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So every time you figure something out or you move up a notch, now you're moving, more secure in your position and creating a place for yourself in that industry.
Yeah.
And you're making progress where it doesn't. That's the progress. The only progress you can make, you can't start being interested in something right from the beginning, starting making millions of dollars a year. You've got to start to where you learn what the terms are, how it actually works, where the success is, where the fun is, where the needs are, and what side of that is most exciting to you. Yep. And so all of that is the progress you got to make just to warm up and get in the game,
Yep.
And you did a lot of that by trying different businesses, but also reading and moving forward. Now, what part of what works would you say, because we're going to wrap things up, but in the book, what do you hear back from other people, and what are you the proudest about that part of that book, maybe that you really helps people more than others, other than the title? To me, I think the title right off the bat is a home run.
Well, I think that just taking complex things and making them simple and taking a common sense approach to a lot of things. And I think,
would you repeat that? Repeat that, please.
Taking complex things and making them simple and just taking a common sense approach, and I think that in that book, when you look at that book and the way I write, I don't try to be sophisticated. I try to be layman terms and commonsensical so people understand. And I think that, everything, you can break things down to a common sense, simple solution. And that's always kind of the mission of like, don't get overwhelmed with complexities. Like try to distill it down to a very basic common sense truth, because that is most likely the answer.
Yeah. And being able to do that gives you incredible power, because it's like exactly where the rubber meets the road, where the difference is going to be made.
Yeah.
And actually, I've heard that said that the mark of genius is taking complex issues and making them simple.
Yeah.
Because you just sit and you see how the pieces, all the fractals come together, and molecules or whatever, how they cycle with each other. And most things, even the computers, like it's so easy to get confused or be overwhelmed with coding, things like that. But it's ones and zeros.
Yeah.
It's like in the computer world, it's every step is one simple step, and then you put another simple step on top of it. But it has to be the exact simple step, because you're going to have a machine, robotics, you're going to have a machine doing that. And they're not going to have time to kind of remember something that's not there. And so when you can do that, you're taking the guesswork out of success. And this is really what the enjoyment is of talking to a person like yourself, and so people can get exposed to ideas and that kind of thinking.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Life is full of mysteries, complexities, confusion, everything. But when you take the guesswork out of the patterns that are going to give you the highest percentage of success, and you can create a rut basically of staying in that groove, you're not wasting time and you're maximizing your chance for success. Last thing, Robert, that you want to pass on as a final word to our listeners?
Well, I would just say, I don't know what the listener audience looks like or who's out there. But if you are an entrepreneur or you're just starting on your journey, I think just make sure that every day you kind of write down the vision of like, what am I trying to do? Right. And keep yourself inspired by sort of, that is your mountain, that is your beacon. Write down, what am I trying to do? What's my vision? Yeah. And then work your way backward from there. So that's the outcome that you want. Work your way backward from there, and map out the steps that are involved with that, and just kind of keep doing that every day, and keep learning and studying everything you can. But just remind yourself of that every day, and just keep pushing to make progress towards it. Fantastic.
Well said. I'm looking forward to seeing how you continue to grow and compound and multiply your company. You've got so many decades of compounding in front of you. Congratulations on having this much success so early in your career, and best wishes for you, your family, and your company.
Thanks, Larry. I definitely appreciate it.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Million Dollar Mastermind. If you felt there were any valuable takeaways from this episode, please take a minute and leave us a 5-star review. Your feedback is important and really helps us get the word out to a wider audience. Remember, we have a valuable webinar that is absolutely free. Register for it right now at weidelonwinning.com. Thanks for listening.